Let's talk to Mark Littlewood, of course, from Popular Conservatism. Mark, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Mike.
I mean, I don't know where to begin with Keir Starmer. I mean, he seems to have not had a conversation with Donald Trump for 8 days. He finally reached out to him, I think, over the weekend, possibly yesterday, and they had a sort of discussion about military cooperation in the Middle East. This despite the fact that we've got no ships, that if we do send an aircraft carrier, it will need to be escorted by the French. The fact that he said that we don't want to take part in the original attacks on Iran, the fact that he now wants to be defensive. I mean, it's all over the place, isn't it? I mean, what is he going on about?
Mike, wouldn't you have loved to have been a fly on the wall or have bugged that phone call to have heard President Trump's fury?
Yes.
I mean, it's almost impossible to discern what the British government's policy is here. I'd actually have a bit more sympathy with Keir Starmer if he was clear-cut and said we're going to have absolutely nothing to do with it. At least that would be a coherent line.
Well, yeah.
But it was sort of, well, you can use these bases, I suppose, and we might get round to, sending a warship over. I noticed that trying to get a ship over from Portsmouth is a bit problematic because the docks are only open between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. on weekdays. So it looks like we can only go to war between 9 and 5 on weekdays and presumably not during a lunch hour. So as President Trump said, I mean, it's pretty pitiful. Put aside whether Britain actually wants to assist in this effort against Iran, even if we did, it looks like we're almost a complete rounding error, really. Although there is a certain delicious irony, isn't there, in the Americans accusing us of being a bit late turning up to a war. I suppose we could, if I was the British Prime Minister, I might throw that back at them. But
yes.
Yeah, I genuinely don't understand what the British government's actual policy is there, and I don't think the Prime Minister does either.
And I think it tells you more about Starmer's failing powers in Downing Street, where it looks as though he wanted to back America in the first instance, in the first wave of attacks, but he was talked out of it by that incredibly dynamic duo of Ed Miliband and Yvette Cooper. And you kind of go, how is he putting up with that? How is he taking their advice on military matters when we know that she's a sort of confirmed pacifist? He obviously doesn't want anybody to use up any oil doing anything. So, he probably doesn't want a war for the purposes of saving the planet. But I've looked at a list of ships that we put out earlier, and I think we could maybe put this up. The number of ships that cannot be deployed from the naval yards here in the UK to the Gulf or even to Cyprus is quite extraordinary. In terms of destroyers, if we needed 2 of them, we've only got 1. There it is there, right? HMS Duncan in maintenance, HMS Daring in maintenance, HMS Dauntless in maintenance, HMS Defender in maintenance. The only one, of course, is HMS Dragon, but that can't go until possibly next Tuesday. Maybe we might get there by sort of end of next week. I mean, it's just extraordinary. And if we do send an aircraft carrier, they're both in maintenance at the moment, and they wouldn't have enough auxiliary ships to go with them to protect them.
Utterly hopeless, isn't it? I mean, I'm afraid this does reflect years of underspending on defence. And we have allowed that budget to fall in order to allow our welfare budget to rise, basically. Yeah. I mean, that's been, if not the conscious decision, the subconscious decision of successive governments. So a complete mess. But putting all that aside, Mike, the other thing is there does seem to have been a complete failure of planning here. I mean, to be working out what we're going to be doing now and how fast we can get various pieces of kit to the region is, many, many days late and many, many dollars short as well.
Right.
You would have thought sort of back in September when the Americans were giving Iran some ultimatums, you might have scratched your head then and sort of thought, OK, well, what is our ability to deploy? Rather than actually waiting for the war to break out and sort of thinking, right, how fast can we get something out of Portsmouth to get over to the area? So I think it's a failure of investment over the years. Defence and our borders and our internal justice system should be the top priorities of government spending. They've become the lowest priorities of government spending. But even with that restraint, even with that constraint, you would have thought, surely, that this didn't come as a total surprise that America was going to strike Iran, and we should have done considerably more, in my view, to have been ready to assist if the political decision was made in that direction.
Well, you would think so, but it also gives the lie, does it not, to Keir Starmer's abilities in any way, shape or form, because he spent a great deal of time, sort of back end of last year, talking about us being on a war footing and how we would need to be on a war footing. We're now at minimum 6 months on from that point, and we don't appear to be not only not on a war footing, but not even on anything like the ability to stand up straight, never mind salute. You know what I mean? It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, we're on a war sitting rather than a war footing, I would think. And I mean, you mentioned the dynamic duo of Cooper and Miliband. I think it was actually the sort of tasty trio, wasn't it, of Miliband, Cooper and Reeves, who were very keen to try and stop this. Presumably, Rachel Reeves doesn't want a single penny spent on our defence or our navy because that might impact on her limited fiscal headroom. So she's just counting beans. But yeah, the wider problem here in trying to decide to do anything is that the Prime Minister is so hopelessly weakened that he's basically in a hostage situation. That any 2 or 3 people in his cabinet can stop him doing anything. He's also at the mercy of the Labour backbenchers. We've seen that time and time again. So we don't really now have a decision maker at the top of the tree. We've got somebody who immediately before taking any decision reaches for Lord Hermer's legal advice before he's willing to say boo to a goose. But even if he's decided, OK, guys, let's go and do X, it only requires a very, very small number of voices to act as a complete block to his actions. So we can almost disregard really what's going through Keir Starmer's mind, because even if he made his mind up on something, it's almost certain that his colleagues would block him or would explore, how to get yet another U-turn out of him. That's actually what's happening at the higher echelons of government. Pretty serious when you're in a war situation like this.
Well, it really is. And Richard Kemp, sort of esteemed former NATO commander in Afghanistan and various other places around the world, got a big piece in the Express today saying, I've spoken to several US military officers in the last few days. They're all utterly bewildered by how far their once most dependable ally has descended into irrelevance, because it does seem to have happened pretty quickly. I mean, it was only, a couple of weeks ago, Boris Johnson was sitting in a BBC studio talking about sending some kind of peacekeeping force to Ukraine. Well, I don't know where he's going to get them from. Yeah,
exactly. No, I mean, our position and reputation on the world stage has been hit extraordinarily badly by this. It's a fiasco from the British perspective. Looks like we can't even properly defend our own bases in Cyprus, or weren't expecting an attack there. I mean, another thing that I've seen quotes from senior American unnamed military forces and those in foreign relations is that they said, well, look, to be honest with you, over recent years and decades, the UK's military assistance has been welcome but not critical. It's not as if we desperately needed the Brits. It's helped a bit in the margins, and that would have been welcome. But what's been more important has been a common public position that we have got used to taking with the United Kingdom, that even if it wasn't utterly decisive what military kit the UK was bringing to the table, at least we would know that you were a staunch ally who was, plugged into what we were doing and typically supportive of it. Well, that's gone as well now. I mean, because we have been one of the most shilly-shallying, dilly-dallying Western nations as far as this is concerned. And as I said, in the most incomprehensible way. This is not really the equivalent of Harold Wilson deciding that we weren't going to join in with the Vietnam War way back in the day. That was a very clear-cut decision. This present position of the UK, I mean, you only need to listen to the Defence Secretary and you just get paragraph after paragraph of word salad. Do we want regime change in Iran or not? Do we consider that the intervention here is legal? Do we consider it moral? Are we doing everything we can to assist the Americans or everything we can to block the Americans? You can't get any answers to these very straightforward questions. So even put aside our military impotence, Mike, what we've also got is a foreign policy and diplomatic nonsense on our hands, in that nobody in the British government can really articulate what British foreign policy is. No. So if you can't make your mind up, it almost doesn't matter whether you've got a military or not.